Today, I'm joined by the founder of Chambers Media, a company that creates social videos for direct-to-consumer brands. They've worked with companies like Coca-Cola, Yahoo, Nordic Track, accumulating over 300 million in trackable sales and over 400 million views. He is on the Forbes 30 Under 30 for marketing and advertising. Travis Chambers, welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm excited to be here, man.
It's my pleasure. I love your work, love your videos. Cannot wait to get into the conversation. But let me start here with you, Travis. What's the most memorable video ad that you and your company produced?
Probably the Nordic Track treadmill dance. That was just such a huge scale shoot. We haven't done anything really that big of scale since. And we had 13 influencers, 50 treadmills. It was just monstrous and epic. We just haven't had a concept like that since that justified that type of scale. But that was fun. That was a really fun shoot.
Yeah, it's really cool the way you got everyone coordinated and rolling around. And like you said, one of the things I think is really impressive is the scale that y'all have implemented into a lot of your shoots. And it's really cool, really cool. What were and to kind of go in a little bit deeper into that, what are some of the components of that ad that you feel that made it really, really powerful?
The scale and the wow factor. Plus, it was a concept that had already been done by OK Go. So it kind of had already been proven to be somewhat of a viral concept. There was already kind of a nod to it in culture. And so everyone felt like it was familiar. Most people couldn't remember where they had seen it before. Of course, we did it far, far bigger. But I think it made people feel good. The reason, too, was Nordic Track didn't say, we need to make $5, $10, $15 million. All they said is we want to influence culture so that people think treadmills are not drudgery. We want to change the way people feel about the treadmill. So there was a very kind of qualitative goal there. Unfortunately, it did drive millions in sales, but the ask itself, I think, is what helped craft that idea. And back then, that was when we did a lot of viral video type stuff. And that was actually the first major production Chamber Media ever did. And it just happened to be one of our biggest scale type videos. But about a year after that, we started pivoting more to direct response. And with direct response, it's a little bit more spokesperson focused, a little bit more information focused. So you don't get really the same ability to do that. So even if you create some spectacle that's really big that captures people's attention, it's much more difficult to get people all the information they need in order to buy. So it was just that period of time where there was true virality happening, and we got to do something during that period of time.
Love that. Capitalizing on the native environment that you're on, whether that's YouTube, Facebook, what have you. So one of the things that you'd mentioned there a few times, Travis, was the way it made people feel, that feeling. So when you're creating a great ad, do you think it's more important to focus on the problem that you're solving, the solution that you have, or the feeling that someone gets when they walk away from watching that video?
One of the things that we've done that's very unique in advertising is we're almost always trying to get the laugh out of people. And the reason is it's very difficult to get people to laugh, which means it's not frequent that content has that characteristic to it. The other thing too is when people laugh, they feel good. And life is hard. People have a lot of difficult things to deal with. And when they're made to feel a little bit lighter, there's a feeling of reciprocation there where they want to give back. They want to purchase. They want to reciprocate that feeling. So that's been part of the reason that we've focused so much on humor over the last few years. That being said, there's tons of different emotional triggers that you can pull. There's shock, there's awe with the spectacle, there's aspiration, wanting to be something. That I think aspiration is probably one of the most common emotions that advertisers use, such as Nike, GoPro, Red Bull. Wouldn't it be cool if I was like that person? Wouldn't it be cool if I could do those kind of things? Very identity focused. Yeah, so humor is just a very underutilized tool. And you do see humor a lot in some ads. I feel like it's less frequent lately. I feel like humor was more prominent 15, 20 years ago. than it is now. I don't know too if that's because Hollywood has changed. You used to have comedy blockbusters like Dumb and Dumber, Adam Sandler movies, Chris Farley movies. And that whole industry basically died in the last 15, 20 years once the huge production CGI movies took over. Kevin Hart, he's pretty much one of the only ones that has survived that phenomenon. So I think people miss that. I think there's just not a lot of as much comedy now. Now comedy's mostly TV shows, Netflix shows, and now you have to be so politically correct. It's even more difficult now to be funny than it used
no
to.
doubt. A lot of those comedians from 20 years ago, they didn't age well. Their jokes didn't age well. And do you think this kind of, it almost feels to me like there's a little bit of a resurgence for this comedy feeling though, that it's kind of happening now. I think of it again with, your Nordic Track video, nerd skincare. So you've kind of adding this comedy element. I'm also seeing it with like the Dollar Shave Club or even Old Spice are starting to implement these comedic elements. Do you think that's because they're trying to target a specific demographic that will respond to it? Or why do you think that you really focus on comedy, Travis?
So the internet itself was a very quirky, weird place as it evolved in its early days. The kind of people who spent a lot of time on the internet were people with strange senses of humor, oftentimes maybe didn't have enough other things going on in their life or weren't busy enough that they could just spend tons of time on Reddit and all these places. So in the early days of YouTube, this very, very strong quirkiness kind of defined the internet. Cat videos, Charlie Bit My Finger, Double Rainbow Guy, Chocolate Rain, all these early viral videos that happened. And mostly it was just because of the nature of how YouTube was built and the nature of that algorithm giving a lot of virality. But what happened is around 2014, 2015, YouTube shut off that virality. Reason being, there was just a lot more content. So it was much more difficult to choose something to rise to the top. Very competitive in that regard. And they also wanted to squeeze dollars out of advertisers. And by that point, a lot of brands had gotten tens of millions of views for free. And so they shut that down so that people would have to run ads and pay YouTube. They really just started to capitalize on that. That changed the culture because now you don't have people putting a significant effort into a viral video, something that's so funny, so unique, so unexpected that it goes viral. And what you're seeing now is now that that's completely died on Facebook and YouTube, you are seeing that happen on TikTok. And TikTok has its completely own culture and environment that's very Gen Y, and they have their own series of jokes. But I think what happens with us is when we make funny commercials in an ad, I think it reminds people of that style of humor. And, the largest purchasing power group is the older millennial, younger Gen X. That they're the ones that are spending the bulk of the money on e-commerce. I'd say in that age 30 to age 45.
Yeah.
That's over half of the purchases that happen on e-commerce. And they're all 90s. They're all 90s quirky Jim Carrey type humor people. That's what we grew up with. And I don't know if the younger generation is growing up with that. And then the older generation had a different kind of humor. Theirs was more of, Bonanza and MASH. And just a completely different, I Love Lucy, completely different type of humor. Not like
that slapstick style, right? Like us 90s folk yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So the humor got really weird for about 15 years, 20 years. And I think that's the reason that group responds to it so well.
Really, really interesting. So I think you've made a strong case for why advertisers should be implementing some sort of this slapstick style comedy and why it's, again, producing just millions and millions of views, millions and millions of trackable sales for your company.